All right, there we go. So whatever you say is being recorded, just to let you know. No faux pas.
I'm always ready for a hot mic.
So did you make your pictures bigger this time, or is it? No, I'm just curious. Is it what we did, or is it what you did?
I couldn't get it all. Yeah, that one works better.
Okay.
So it was kind of the screen.
That's
good.
Good, well, it's bigger now.
Yeah.
Okay, we're playing Bob.
That's the problem.
That's
Down there.
You need everything? Right, recording, you're on, brothers. I'm 35. Thank you.
You'll hear the screams.
Steve, you hold down the table, all right?
You got it.
The table mics are on, so just watch yourself. If you guys like bang the tables, it sends shockwaves through the.
How you doing? Good. Good evening. Did Joe, that guy ever show up? For Joe?
Hey, Al, how are you? Good to see you.
Now that it's over, I'm thinking about going to Washington Nurses Association. I'm going to finalize the gentleman left your firm. No, he's got into the campaign.
I did send a check.
Right, you did tell me the Mental Historic Society, right, yeah. Because I asked him, and who I talked to, wasn't remembering her, because he probably came from your office, thinking that you're making a donation. I'm sure that you did, yeah. But I will follow up on that.
Sure.
Very happy with that. Okay, thank you much.
You're welcome.
Nice to meet you. It's a rich experience, it was with that fireworks store. We came down here to change the zoning, but they, then we were for sale before we even knew we zoned that area. But I remember that, I was very impressed. Hey, how are you? Well, you have a reputation, a good one. That's why visiting nurses used to, because we weren't sure whether. But it all went very well, and our time had passed. To do that, we didn't have a large caseload, and we were too small to deal with Medicare regs. Probably we could. Everything was.
Move on, right?
Right.
Oh, how are you, Don?
I've been better on the downside of a bad cold.
Oh. No, you're getting it out of the way before Christmas, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, she didn't want to make the public hearing.
Right.
So I want to get that.
Yeah.
Move what? I haven't heard that.
Well, when I looked online to see what the time of the meeting was, the title of it was that we're redefining the boundaries of the project.
These are all.
Well, yeah, it's not the Williamson Park project.
Oh, what is it? I thought that's what it was.
If you look on the screen right now, okay, that it is, I think it's primarily to deal with the stock conversion. It's actually something I strongly support. Do you know the public portal on the borough website? Let's see, I even have it here. Yeah, notice of public hearing, redevelopment area. You gotta go really to the bottom here. This. These two paragraphs. Rooms and park stuff. Did you know the borough doesn't own all of Williamson Park? They lease part of it from a group of 3 churches in Trenton. This dates back to the creation of the park in 1939.
No kidding.
The churches are still in existence. The lease was because the churches did not own property per se. It was given to them in trust, and the trust prohibits them selling it. So they leased it for 99 years at $1 a year. And through a contact I have a copy of the lease. It prohibits them from selling. They cannot sell it. So I don't know how, I'm sure lawyers can do something with it. I'm gonna go talk to its 3 churches. There's a Methodist church, a Baptist church, and a Presbyterian church in Trenton. Hello, good to see you. Did you, well, I guess you read about what they were doing tonight.
Well, generally, yeah.
Do you two know each other?
Hi, Bob Paul. I taught him nice to meet you. Excuse me?
Whereabouts are you on the borough?
I'm in, near Calhoun Street Bridge, on Fairview Avenue.
It's Bob.
Bob Paul. Really?
Council member
I
elect.
just got elected to the council.
So you
Not
can
quite.
sit up there, so-
So, yeah, just taking advantage of being in the back for now.
Well, he's gonna be about 15 minutes down
Yeah,
Let's just stick around for first few minutes. If you know, anything else.
I saw David Nate posted the borough manager's report. And it had something about the hookah lounge.
I saw a reference, I didn't see Dave's posting the report, but I saw some other reference in the, I guess for the agenda, proposed agenda for next week, they mentioned something about it. Somewhere I saw a complaint about the hookah lounge.
It's the blade of foot on Crown Street.
Yeah, I know.
This meeting being about the stock of building is how I interpret it. It's something I really hope they can do something about. And that building could be an asset to the community.
Sounds like a building, I understand that last week that the ownership is split right now. They had, the lenders have foreclosed part of it, so it's, the ground floor is owned by someone different than the upper floors or something.
The ground floor was in business back when the upper floors were vacant. At one point,
Looked like they're going
about 2008, 2009, I joined a gym that was gonna be on the ground floor.
that's why I moved in here in '08, and it looked like they're getting ready to open a gym there.
We went down, it was
Did it ever
closed,
open?
it looked,
Did it
they
ever
had the equipment there,
Yeah.
and we signed up,
Yeah.
and they were not allowed to do it. I mean, they gave us our money back, we gave them a deposit and
But it
everything.
never opened.
Yeah. Oh, well. I was talking with Ronald Stock, and he would really appreciate you don't call it the Stock Building.
Good evening. Hi, Pat, you lost? Is it hi, Pat, you lost?
No, I just thought it might be interesting to show.
No, all right.
So what's happening?
Same old, same old. Yes, we're sitting up there.
She'll see it.
Comfort kitchen or comfort food? Yeah, or make a really a nice little spot. They do vegan, they do vegetarian, and they do regular. So my daughter, their partner for vegans.
JV?
I know, this is.
Good evening, everyone. Before we have our regular meeting of the Borough Council at 7 o'clock, we have a special public hearing meeting that starts here at 6 o'clock until about 10 of 7. And we have Executive Director of the Bucks County Redevelopment Authority, Jeff Dark, who will be running this meeting, and he's going to give a presentation on the amendment to the redevelopment proposal for the Morrisville Town Center.
And Margie McEvan's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. And Margie McGavitt, right? From the Planning Commission, correct? She is also here, and they'll be able to answer some questions. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Jeff, and he'll run this portion of the meeting for us.
Thank you. Figured I'd come up here where the microphone is so you can hear me. Sometimes
You can actually take that out, Jeff.
I have
Yeah, it
a
might be-
tendency to
Just make sure the little
speak
green
softly.
light's on the side.
Okay. We're on, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you, members of council and residents of Morrisville Borough, for being here today for this public hearing. Of course, we're here to discuss the Morrisville Town Center Certified
redevelopment area plan amendment and redevelopment proposal. I would note with me here today, I have the Redevelopment Authority Solicitor, Alan Toadvine, and as Council President pointed out, Margie McKevitt from the county's Department of Community and Economic Development. And I'd also like to thank Steve Ware for your assistance in, putting this together and going through this process. So we're here today to talk about an amendment to the Morrisville Town Center redevelopment area plan. I just want to make clear that this has nothing to do with the Williamson Park proposed redevelopment. This is a separate item. Similarly, if you're here for an impeachment hearing, that was yesterday, and you're in the wrong state. So, next slide, please, Margie. If you're here, you've probably seen this. This was the notice that we published in accordance with the Pennsylvania Urban Redevelopment Law, and it explains that we are here today to discuss the Morrisville Town Center redevelopment area plan and proposal. And the amendment basically includes adding certain portions of the property that weren't included in the previously adopted plan. Also, I'd point out that the package was made available for public review at the Morrisville Free Library here at Borough Hall and our Redevelopment Authority's office in Bristol. Just a couple presentation points. One, I'll give a brief overview of the Redevelopment Authority and the Pennsylvania Urban Redevelopment Law. Secondly, I'll review very briefly the Morrisville Borough redevelopment area. Number three, I will review, again, briefly the Morrisville Town Center redevelopment area plan amendment and proposal. And then lastly, I'll talk about next steps and then public comment. So next slide, please. So the Redevelopment Authority of the County of Bucks was created in 1962, and we are empowered by the Pennsylvania Urban Redevelopment Law, which was enacted in 1945 and is commonly referred to as Act 385. We assist municipalities, businesses, private developers, homeowners, and nonprofits located in the County of Bucks in the rehabilitation of blighted and deteriorated properties and the reuse of abandoned, unused, or underutilized commercial and industrial sites. We operate throughout Bucks County, and our offices are located in Bristol Borough. Next slide, please. So under the Pennsylvania Urban Redevelopment Law, or the URL, it authorizes communities to designate or establish what are called redevelopment areas, and redevelopment areas are a term defined under the Act as an area, whether improved or unimproved, which a planning commission may find to be blighted because of the existence of certain conditions enumerated under Section 2 of the Act, so as to require the redevelopment under the provisions of the Act. And as you can see there, there's a summary of the 7 conditions defined under the Act, and very briefly, they are unsafe, unsanitary, inadequate or overcrowded conditions, inadequate planning of an area, excessive land coverage of buildings thereon, lack of proper light, air, and open space, faulty lot and street layouts, defective design and arrangement of buildings, and economically and socially undesirable land uses. So the Act requires that a majority of an area meet only one of those criteria to be determined or defined as a certified redevelopment area. Next slide, please. So going backwards in time, I think it was around 2003, the borough and the Redevelopment Authority, working together with the county, started a study of an area, or actually probably a more comprehensive study of the borough, and prepared a report that basically established the area that you see outlined in red. I apologize, it's a 15-year-old map that we didn't have electronically, so I did my best to scan it and enhance it so you could see it. But basically, that was the area that was designated and adopted as a certified redevelopment area. In other words, that area, it was demonstrated that at least half of the area met the criteria for a blighted area under the Act. Next slide, please. So the Commonwealth and the legislators in their infinite wisdom decided that it's just not enough to establish a certified redevelopment area. There are provisions under the Act to develop what are called redevelopment area plans and proposals. So what happened was there was a committee that worked together with the borough and the Redevelopment Authority in the county, and I think they took a little bit of a closer look at some of the areas that were in the certified redevelopment area. And subsequently in 2005, the Morrisville Riverview Redevelopment Area Plan was adopted, and that was done after several months of committee meetings and public meetings. And then next slide, please. In 2006, the Morrisville Town Center redevelopment area plan was adopted, again, after several months of meetings, committee meetings, and public meetings. And the Town Center plan, as well as the Riverview plan, established various goals and objectives for the area in accordance with the provisions of Act 385. And those were aimed at providing directions, incentives, in a comprehensive fashion to address barriers to growth and redevelopment and blight. Next slide, please. So fast forward to today, we're here to talk about amending the redevelopment area plan, specifically 3 of the sections of the plan that was adopted back in 2006. Basically, all these have to do is with the boundaries and the associated maps of the area. So looking at section 1 that was incorporated into the plan, of course, we're here to amend the boundaries of the plan to include the parcels, certain parcels on the westerly side of Pennsylvania Avenue. On the previous slide, if you notice the map, the way it was drawn up was all the properties on the westerly side of Pennsylvania Avenue were included in the redevelopment area plan, but nothing on the easterly side. So we are proposing to add the tax parcels identified on that slide, 24-9-274-001. It's probably better known as the borough and parking lot. And then 24-9-277, -277-1, -277-2, and 277-3, which is more commonly known as the Stockham Building. Next slide, please. Under section 1, we also have a existing land use map. So we just basically propose to amend that to update it to include the new areas and also obviously the existing land uses for the area. Next slide, please. The other amendment is to the land use plan and map. Again, we're just proposing to add the 2 the areas on the easterly side of Pennsylvania Avenue, and then update the map to include the proposed land use, which would be consistent with the recommendations from the original plan as commercial mixed use and transportation and utilities. Next slide, please. And then lastly, section 5 deals with statements of changes in zoning ordinances and map. And again, we're amending the boundary map for the existing zoning to include those areas, and then bring the map up to date with the current zoning of the borough. And I would just note there are no proposed changes to existing zoning ordinances as part of what we're talking about here today. All other provisions of the plan will remain in full force and effect, and these are the only items we are proposing to amend at this point in time. Next slide, please. We also prepared a proposal which basically aims to achieve the goals and objectives that were adopted under the Morrisville Town Center redevelopment area plan. A couple of them are highlighted there, leveraging private investment. Excuse me, I think I need glasses, so I'm going to go to my cheat sheet down here.
By the way, Jeff, if I may just let the public know that this proposal is available on the borough's website under public portal if you wish to look at it later on.
Okay, so from the plan, forgive me for reading directly, but leveraging new private investments by revitalizing certain areas within the community that include portions of its commercial and business district, limited residential areas, and its underutilized industrial areas, improving the composition of the existing mixed land uses where incompatible adjacent land uses create problems and conflicts, restricting new growth and investment, and promoting quality of life for all borough residents by creating opportunities for new private investment, sparking revitalization, and generating increased tax revenues. Next slide, please. So basically, expanding on the redevelopment proposal, it's to initiate steps for the redevelopment authority to facilitate the adaptive reuse of the Stockham building and also maximize the adjacent borough parking lot and facilitate public-private partnerships where possible to make that happen, and to do that in coordination and cooperation with the borough as well as the county and in accordance with the provisions of the urban redevelopment law. Next slide, please. So just to touch on the next steps, we've made presentations to the Borough Planning Commission. That was October 7th. After that, we went to the County Planning Commission. That was done on November 6th. Each of those commissions adopted resolutions, which were included in the package that was made part of the public hearing document. And then, of course, we're here today for the public hearing. I think after this, I'll make a brief presentation to council at their agenda meeting. From there, we would ask for the council's consideration of adoption of a resolution at their next available meeting. From there, we would take it to the Bucks County Commissioners for approval, and assuming that happens, that'll come to my board for final approval, and then from there, we would look to implement the redevelopment area plan and proposal. So that is the public hearing presentation that I have right now. At this point, if there's any public comments or questions, I'd certainly be happy to take those, and I guess I'll have a seat at the table this time.
Thanks, Jeff. Is there anyone that would like to come to the podium to ask any questions? Just please state your name and...
Sure. Hi, Leah Targon. I live at 306 West Bridge Street.
Okay, thank you.
Just wondering, has anyone approached the borough with an interest in purchasing Stockham, and to what end? At this point in time, is anyone aware? No? No specific interest has been expressed? Ah, okay. What kinds of things would you envision as opportunities, for instance, as a use for that building?
Well, it certainly seems conducive to retail on the line, retail and residential upper floors. That is consistent with previous submissions or proposals for the borough that haven't come to fruition. It's going to make the most sense.
If I can elaborate on that, I guess it was about, it has to be at least 5, maybe 6 years ago. One of the owners of that building, because there was 2 involved in that, did bring proposals to the borough with drawings of condos on the top section. The bottom was supposed to be a restaurant. The drawings were really nice. It, like Jeff was saying, never got to where it needed to be. The building has changed hands many times through different owners. It would go into default. Everybody knows the whole story about it. It's been going on for like about 12 years at least. But there were some drawings brought in of some ideas to do commercial on the bottom, residential on the top, because it is mixed use already for zoning down there. So I would imagine that that's something that the borough would probably look into if a developer brought something like that in, just an idea.
Because I've noticed that it's been improved through the years since I've been here 20 years.
Yeah. They started and stopped and ran out of money. Then they put those towers on the top and they got paid to do that. And then it just came to an end. And then just, different problems back and forth with the 2 different owners. And it's gotten to be where it is now, where it's just a blighted mess. Like I said, we nicknamed it the biggest birdhouse in Bucks County. It's just open all the time. But that's something we would probably look into down the road, would be commercial and residential if that was proposed. Is there anyone else that has any questions on this? Please come to the podium. Just state your name, please.
I'm Todd Weber, East Franklin Street. I'm just, sorry, I don't completely understand this. Can you just elaborate on what the consequence of including a property in this plan actually is? Like, how does it benefit or not from being in the plan?
So for one, I think it just provides an extra layer of recognition. Again, as I said before, shines a bright light on the area. So in the event that we have to apply, if there's an opportunity to apply for certain types of public funds or financing, that certainly is an advantage over other potential applications that may not be in a certified redevelopment area. Secondly, I think it gives some additional tools to deal with the conditions of the property and its vacant blighted condition, specifically for the ability for the authority to potentially acquire the property.
If I may?
Sure.
So Jeff, thanks for coming out. And thanks for the presentation. I know that, and it's been a pleasure working with you on the Vacant Properties Committee. And I know this property comes up every single meeting.
Yes.
So I'm glad that we're taking steps towards putting ourselves into a more, and this is what I call it, a more dominant position is really what it puts us in. It sounds like it's just a changing of a map, but really what it is it changes the opportunities that can take place on that property. I know that we've spoken about it ad nauseum. I like the idea of shining the light on it. It should have been done a very, very long time ago. But I just want to kind of summarize what you said, and I'm going to ask you to stop me if I'm wrong. What we're looking to do is change the map to include the Stockham building and the parking lot near it, to make it a certified redevelopment area.
Oh, it already is in a certified redevelopment area.
Okay.
However, it's not within the more defined certified redevelopment area plan.
Okay, to then adopt it within a plan for redevelopment. Okay, thank you for the correction. So again, I'm very excited that we're putting such an emphasis on this, and I'm looking forward to the future of that piece of land or that piece of property and what could be with it, because it is absolutely something that we should be proud of. It's the center. It's literally the middle of our town. It's what everybody knows Morrisville to be. They come into town and they see the Stockham building. It used to be beautiful. Now it's got a bunch of holes cut into it and no plan. So it's good to see that we're at least taking steps to maneuver ourselves into a more dominant position with it.
Go ahead.
May I ask, Jeff, while you're at the podium, maybe you could be a little fortuitous and talk about the next steps that will come after the next steps on your slide. Say everything goes according to plan on those next steps and the property comes under public control. Talk about what happens then, particularly council members who may not have been through this sort of thing before, like the RFP, RFQ process, considering conceptual plans. Just kind of lay that out for us.
Sure. And I also have my solicitor here to help me step in if I get out of line here. So, yeah, assuming what you just said happens, typically we would issue some sort of request for proposals, request for expressions of interest, request for qualifications to generate responses from redevelopers interested in rehabilitating and reusing the property. Assuming, we do receive responses, we would review those with the borough. And of course, any type of redevelopment work there would have to follow whatever borough processes and are prescribed for in zoning and what have you. But ultimately, if someone is selected and meets the requirements of what the borough is looking for, we would basically enter into a redevelopment contract with that entity, which would basically spell out exactly what's going to happen on the property, when it's going to happen, with a construction schedule. And at the end of the day, they're going to have to complete that project satisfactorily to earn a certificate of completion before that property is basically transferred back to them. So generally, that's the gist of it. I think it gives the borough the benefit of being able to review numerous proposals and not necessarily having to go in the highest bidder, but the best use as well. That's one of the benefits of the redevelopment authority.
And Jeff, Council, the only thing I would add to that is that the borough's going to be involved early.
Could you speak into the microphone just so the folks at home can hear?
Yes.
What I was going to say is that the borough's going to be involved right from the beginning. So Jeff was talking about the RFPs. They're going to be based on conversations and decisions that the borough makes as to what they would like to see there. So that'll be part of the process, which will get you hopefully the redevelopers that will redevelop the property in accordance with your wishes. So it's going to be the borough's involvement early on. as opposed to just selecting a redeveloper.
Alan, just so you know, Jeff promised us warp speed here. So we're talking about looking at developer proposals, before summertime, and hopefully having a contract in place before the fall, and that we actually see something productive happen with this property the following year.
Well,
if not sooner.
We do try to move a little bit faster than the speed of government. So.
And Scott, if you would, can you just speak to what committees that would go through before it got to council real quick?
Well, depending on what the concept is, it might need to go before the planning commission.
Right.
It would most likely, if they need any kind of variances of any kind, would have to go before the zoning hearing board. And ultimately, it's council's decision. At the beginning, the middle, and the end, it's council's decision because the redevelopment authority has taken on this undertaking at our request. So they're basically project managing this for us. We're the client. Margie over there is with the county. Wave at Margie because she's the bank. And everybody has
Margie.
their role to play, but there's a lot of hands involved in this equation. So.
Okay. Yep. That's why I just wanted people to hear that.
Yeah, I don't think that people realize all the working entities when you're trying to do something as big as what's happened with this Stockham building. To have this sit for so long and keep deteriorating and changing hands and trying to do something with this building, it really takes the effort of the county involved, your commissioners behind this, who you don't even know behind the scenes, were working to figure out how you handle things like this. And the redevelopment authority helps us. They're basically, like Scott was saying, they're that middleman. They're the ones who are going to help us make sure this follows the process. And they have a different level that they can handle things for us that we can't do with those RFPs because they're basically monitoring that for us. Kind of like when we do those vacant properties and the RDA is involved in that. It's the same thing. They work with us. They do what we want them to do along with the county, and that's how you get rid of some of those blighted properties. By involving the redevelopment authority in there, they're assisting us to do that. It just makes it move easier for the borough to do that. So I appreciate all the work that you guys have done because I don't think people realize behind the scenes how long this has been going on and everything that everyone has been doing to get to this point. So.
Yeah, just maybe point out, I think when we talk about that far ahead, it is pretty far ahead. But and I think it's a little bit separate than what we're talking about here, in that we're setting or putting in place tools to make available to the borough to not only address that area, but the Morrisville Town Center redevelopment area as a whole as well too, and the downtown, and certainly that building in its current condition is a hindrance, especially if you're trying to attract new businesses, new investment into the borough, and they see a building like that in that condition, which is, that's an anchor building, and it qualifies as an anchor building. And the fact that it's been in that condition for so long, it's been a barrier, to say the least.
Yeah, it's brought up constantly. You can be assured. Does anyone else have any questions when you will come to that podium there and just state your name, please? And that way we can also hear you on the recording.
Good evening. Name's Donald Rice, 343 Crown Street. I want to say I'm really thrilled to hear you talk about rehabilitating the Stockham building. It's been a problem ever since I lived in Morrisville, which is since the early 1990s. I have one question. I feel like I'm coming in on the middle of this conversation. I don't understand how can this plan then get the property from the current owners to the borough? And is that going to be difficult, or do you think by using the redevelopment authority's planning abilities that it can happen in a timely manner? Thank you.
I think you'll be able to speak to that, how that works, Jeff.
Sure, and I think the answer to your question is this is a tool to, on behalf of the borough, for the authority to implement steps to acquire the property and see it rehabilitated in a manner that's beneficial to the borough and to the town center.
So you can get it hopefully from the current owners who have been a problem.
We believe so, but there's a process involved, and this is part of it.
Yeah.
Just can you clarify on that? That never becomes the borough's property, correct? The RDA would be the one to take it over and
Correct.
do it.
But you're steering the bus.
Right.
It becomes the county's asset at that point to liquidate, correct?
The redevelopment authorities.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I don't
Oh, I
understand.
said it would become the county's asset to liquidate, correct? In other words, it would be the county that would be purchasing it and
redevelopment
finding the developer. Is
No,
that?
it would be the redevelopment authority.
Redevelopment Authority
Okay.
does. It's on our behalf.
We're a quasi-governmental agency. We have a 5-member board that's appointed by the county commissioners, but other than that, we're an authority created under Act 385, so we're separate from the county.
Anyone else have any more questions they'd like to ask? Please come to the podium. Just state your name, please.
Alan Ginsberg. I live at 389 West Palmer. The question is in regard to a timeline. Is there some point in time where this new level of possibility runs out? In other words, supposing nobody comes to buy.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No,
It's hard to.
I can answer.
Okay.
So, no, there's no expiration date as far as the ability to do something with this property. If RFPs are issued and there's no interest, then, it would be a situation where I guess you would go back to the drawing board and maybe tweak your requirements or your conditions to hopefully generate interest. But there is no time limit as far as when this has to be implemented.
So that this could remain in place and sit like it is indefinitely.
If nobody does anything, absolutely.
If nobody wanted to buy it.
But I don't think that's the case, or we wouldn't be here tonight with the borough.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Could you guys give an example or two of other like structures that you've been involved in other towns and what the timeline looked like for that? That might help the public.
Sure.
Well, in terms of like structures, I don't think there's anyone like this in the county. And I'm serious. I don't think there is.
There's one.
But, there's various certified redevelopment areas that we've established throughout the county. I think one good example would be up in Sellersville Borough, what's now called the Sellersville Business Campus. That was a joint project, first of its kind in the county, which the county commissioners launched. And we were basically able to be involved in that to establish a certified redevelopment area and plan that assembled, basically, it took 46 parcels, 3 of which were out parcels. The rest were owned by a corporation. We were able to assemble that 46 acres, which was subdivided into 6 buildable lots. And just recently, they had a groundbreaking for a manufacturing company there, which purchased 2 of the lots. And I think that's moving along. So that was an old, a vacant historic industrial property that employed hundreds of people in Sellersville, which went, they closed the operations down in the borough. They demolished the building and left a 5-acre pad. And again, we were able to come in and use this tool to work with the county and the borough to get something there that they really wanted, which was jobs, manufacturing and jobs. So.
Remember, the goal here is to rehab the building and the property, get it back on the tax rolls at its highest, best use, with a concept that fits the needs of the community as quickly as possible. Now, government doesn't always move very quickly, but it's probably like a smaller version of the Dial property in Bristol. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we always looked at it, if you do nothing, it stays the way it is and just keeps deteriorating. Or you start to work on what can you put in place, how can you make those changes to make something happen with the building? Because otherwise, you're going to be here 5 more years from now saying, what's happening with that Stocking building? So we're trying to do everything possible to make a use of that building, because we certainly want to make sure that it stays as an anchor building for our downtown. And our best option has been, for what we've been doing with some of these tools, Jeff has mentioned, in the downtown, from the Alerta program, is an enticement to have a developer come in, because that building would need a lot of work. And by encompassing that building under the control with us, with the RDA, they, as Jeff mentioned, have ways of being able to get better financing for someone that also would entice a developer to come in and want to invest that kind of money into that building, because it's going to take a lot. So you're at least putting in the tools to make it more conducive for someone to take a good look at that building and saying, yeah, I'll invest in that, because they're able to put the money in and get money back out of their investment. Right now, I don't think they would, because it would need so much. So this is just a tool that we're putting in to help with that. So I think it's a win for Morrisville. We can't just sit there and let it go another 5 years and then complain 5 years from now. Like everyone's saying, I'm still waiting. And you're right, absolutely right. Is there anyone else have any questions for the RDA? Sure.
Todd Weber again. I was just wondering, with such a big map, are there other buildings besides the Stockholm building that are under consideration for promotion for renovation here? Because I hear the argument at the, with the Williamson development proposal, that to have a nucleus of business to attract, enough people to support it is important for that project. And in this case, we're talking about renovating one, albeit iconic, building in town, but is there a plan for applying this sort of approach to other businesses in that downtown area that might also foster more robust development of that area than just the Stockholm building?
I think that opportunity exists, and again, we are proceeding at the direction of the borough, but I certainly think there are potentially other opportunities to look at, maybe more comprehensively in the future. But for the purpose of today, we're here to say for a more specific reason, but a more specific area to address a long-standing issue in the borough. But we would be happy to talk to the borough and look at what exists now and see if there's other opportunities out there.
Yeah, we've worked several projects through the years with the RDA. One of them was the Lehigh Rubber Building. That needed several grant cycles to remediate what needed to be done in there to even be able to sell that building. And by having the RDA do the same thing, where they purchased that building, was under their control, then they were able to apply for those grants to clean up the things, money that the borough wouldn't have been able to do, to get that prepared to sell. And that's where you see what's happening with that today. That's going to be the brewery, distillery. So by having them, like I said, the borough identify a building and say, we need help with this building, and incorporating them to help with us, that's what they do for us. We're hoping that same thing's going to happen with this, that happened with the Lehigh. Because Lehigh, same thing. It's a very old building. If you were to take that down, you would never be able to build that where it's sitting today by your code standards. So to be able to turn that and keep that iconic building and make it into a useful brewery and distillery is a win. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with that Stockholm building. So whatever tools we need to put in there to make sure that that gets developed, we just don't want it to keep deteriorating. Anyone else? Sure.
Don Rice again. I'm just curious if I've heard you call the building blighted. Does anybody have a feel for what kind of shape the building is in currently? Is it in major need of rehabilitation, or, does it need the hole sealed up and cleaned up?
Steve, right?
You get the idea. Thank you.
The interior of the building is in disrepair. Basically, it's a shell. The borough and code enforcement have been inside the building several times over the last couple of years, but it would need an extensive amount of investment.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think there's elevator or anything working there, right? Nope. Correct, all of it? Yeah.
Would it be safe to say it's pretty much structurally sound, but everything else needs to be done?
Correct.
Well, I'm not an engineer. I can't tell you what's structurally sound, but
From what you can tell.
the exterior of the building, you can see the condition it's in. It, needs a little lipstick. The interior of the building,
Needs
like I said, it's pretty much a shell. What you see is what you get. The inside, you're starting over.
Has good bones.
Good bones. That's good. Yes.
Yep, yep. Any older building like that we can renovate for downtown and keep that so that it's part of our history, part of the aesthetics of our town is a good thing. So I think this is a great idea what we're doing with this. So it's just another step. Just keep moving that forward to help with downtown. Does there anyone else have anything else you'd like to ask the RDA? Is there anything further you'd like to mention or?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. I look forward to continuing this process and look forward to continuing to work with the borough on these types of properties. So, and again, I thank everybody for coming out today to the public hearing. And that's all I have, Madam President.
Now for Jeff, we vote this on Monday. I think the Planning Commission, Bucks Planning Commission is their meeting's the 18th?
No, the county commissioners.
County Commissioners, I'm sorry.
Wednesday,
The Wednesday, the 18th, so it would go from us up to them next, correct? Okay. That'd be the process from there. Thank you.
And the packet that we've been referring to is on the borough's website on public portal if anyone wants to access it later. Yes.
So if you go up there, all that information, we post everything, so you can see it for yourself, read it in detail. And of course, if you have any questions further about it, contact Scott, contact one of us. We'll make sure we get those questions answered for you.
And you can contact me.
Yeah.
Or stop in. We have an open door policy.
Yeah, there you go. We'll send everybody over to you, Jeff.
I have one more question / comment. Can you comment on the fact that the Stockton building is made up of 4 parcels and what that means to why it's taken so long to even do anything with it? What that would mean for the future if you guys weren't getting involved? How likely is it that somebody would be able to come in and purchase all 4 to do something with that building?
So my understanding is that in around 2015, the building was condoed, and there was 4 separate tax parcels, 2 different owners, in a common area. I think I would comment that this process is the correct tool to facilitate the reuse as opposed to other tools that we have available to us under the urban redevelopment law. In that, when I talked about the Sellersville Business Campus site and that certified redevelopment area, we had the ability to consolidate those parcels and then subdivide it into 6 lots. I think, okay.
It's obviously a little more challenging, but as Jeff said with Sellersville, I mean, that conglomerate of parcels, a lot of them were movie lot parcels, so they were 5 feet wide, 20 feet deep. That you went to the movies and they gave you a ticket and you owned a piece of ground in Sellersville. So it was a challenge also, but with the ability of the RDA to gather all those parcels together in one unit and then take it from there, that it makes it so much easier. So I think somebody trying to buy this property would be hard pressed to be able to acquire all the necessary parcels to be able to, operate the building properly, right? So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the borough definitely couldn't offer a developer what the RDA could offer them by incorporating all those parcels together. It could turn into a mess if we were the ones trying to be the realtor and handling that. It's best if the county and the RDA handles that for us. Is there anything else? Okay, if you would like then, our official meeting starts at 7 o'clock, so if there's no other questions, I'm going to officially close this portion of the public meeting for this. Jeff, if you would like, we'll take that break. We'll stick around when the rest of the council gets here. I'll make sure we bring that up first if there's any questions from the rest of the council at that point about this. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Sorry.
I thought it was my truck because my keys were in my pocket, so maybe I hit it back.
Hey, John?
Thanks for explaining that. Sure. It was a nice presentation. I wasn't even aware that this was the thing. Thank you. So I'm just curious, how do they actually acquire the property from someone who owns it now?
We recorded, I believe he did, so that we can post it later, but it wasn't broadcasting. We weren't going to broadcast it, so it's just recorded, I believe. All right, so we'll need to rejigger everything before 7 o'clock. Okay.
Thanks for picking this up. Sometimes he hears, sometimes he doesn't, but that says he's gonna do something, he doesn't. They wanted to demolish it. Thanks very much.
How are you?
Like, what's the path of least resistance and what's the quickest way to get this water? Do you say
Good, huh?
nuisance, go to district court
It's
avenue?
crazy at work. It has been like extremely insane at work.